A very good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on News First. I'm Ramesh Irugal Bandara.
And I'm Sarah LaFonseca. But before we head into our stories, first we'll take a look at your headlines.
Bus fares were increased to avoid strike action. A statement from the Deputy Minister of Transport. Cloudy and rainy conditions forecast due to low-level atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of the country. Doctors stage 24-hour token strike against FTA with Singapore. President invites all parties for talks. Politicians in tug of war to commemorate those who died in the north during the war.
Deputy Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Ashok Abesinghe says the cabinet paper stating the 12.5% increase in bus fares will be presented to the Cabinet of Ministers for approval on the 22nd of this month. Is this price hike reasonable as per the national policy on the revision of bus fares?
According to the revision of bus fares under the national policy, fares are revised on the 1st of July every year. But as the government decided to increase fuel prices, bus associations called for an increase in fares before the annual revision takes place. Following preliminary talks, Cabinet approved an increase of 6.56%. However, as the minimum fare was not amended and the amendments as proposed by certain bus associations were not followed, bus associations threatened to launch a strike action. While one group called for a 10% increase, another called for a 20% price hike.
There are certain criteria in the national policy on the revision of bus fares. According to the price increased in fuel, it calculates to 4.4%. Our cost in services have increased. Cost for air conditioners and other repairs have increased. But the monthly and daily expenses as well as expenses for log sheets haven't increased. The cost for the annual revenue license has also not increased. There is no reason to lie about it. The fact that the rupee has depreciated is also a cost. When you look at the financing, it calculates to about 9%. There are provisions in the national policy on the revision of bus fares that an additional 1 or 2% can be increased on the advice of the minister, which is why we asked for a 10% increase. There is a 4.5% cost for diesel and a 5% cost for spare parts. Moreover, the cost for tire tube tapes have increased by 200%. We ran for 4 kilometers with a litre of diesel, but with a litre of diesel being increased to 114 rupees, we can run 2 kilometers. This has severely impacted the industry in the Colombo city. That fare was completely wrong. The 12% has not been calculated properly, adding to the cost which affects us. They have only calculated the diesel price. It would be much higher if it is calculated properly. It seems as if it would increase much more. No, there is no equation because we even understand the factors for this revision. It was long overdue. It would take much longer if we go to formulate more policies. They wanted this to be implemented right away yesterday. So the equation was spoken about. Rather than giving them the 20% they asked for, we decided to give them 12.5%. We can talk later about how it affects the formula. Show us that the strike can be stopped with just 10% and we can talk about it.
The functions of the National Transport Commission are to advise the government on the national policy relating to passenger transport services by omnibuses. Speaking to News First, its chairman said the decision to increase bus fares by 12.5% was taken without consulting the National Transport Commission. Meanwhile, issuing a release, the National Movement for Consumer Rights Protection says the price hike is unreasonable as per the national policy on the revision of bus fares. It adds if the revised bus fare is not withdrawn, the National Movement for Consumer Rights Protection is prepared to go to court on behalf of the people. By refusing to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Alabama city bus in 1955, black seamstress Rosa Parks helped initiate the civil rights movement in the United States. Back then in Montgomery, Alabama, when a bus became full, the seats near the front were given to white passengers. Montgomery bus driver ordered Parks and 3 other African Americans seated nearby to move to the back of the bus. 3 riders complied. Parks did not. In 1955, the Women's Political Council issued a leaflet calling for a boycott of Montgomery buses. Don't ride the bus to work, to town, to school or any place, Monday, December 5th. The Montgomery bus boycott triggered a firestorm in the South. People walked to work or rode their bikes, and carpools were established to help the elderly. The bus company suffered thousands of dollars in lost revenue. Finally, on the 23rd of November 1956, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the MIA. Segregated busing was declared unconstitutional. City officials reluctantly agreed to comply with the court ruling.
The Met Department warns that wind speeds in sea areas of the western, southern and eastern areas around the country could increase during the next few hours. The department adds that most areas in the country would experience a rainfall of over 100 millimeters. Newsfirst David Paldano reports from Colombo.
We are now here at DR Vijayawardhan, where we have currently experienced heavy showers in Colombo. Due to these heavy showers, people in Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa who have suffered with droughts are able to continue with their farming habits. We will now take a look at the weather forecast by the Met Department.
The Department of Meteorology states the wind speed in the seas off the coast of Colombo to Galle and Pothuil via Batticaloa will increase to 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. The Met Department has requested the fishing and naval communities to remain cautious when setting out to sea. Due to a low-level atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of Sri Lanka associated with the intertropical convergence zone, cloudy and showery condition is expected over most parts of the island. The Disaster Management Centre said water levels of the Athanagala Oya has risen in Dunmale following a heavy rainfall. DMC Assistant Director Pradeep Kodipili said those living in Jayala, Minuwangoda, Gampaha and Wattala areas need to remain vigilant. In addition, 6 spill gates of the Daduru Oya, 4 spill gates of the Udawalava Reservoir and 2 spill gates of the Kala River have been opened. The DMC has cautioned those living in low-lying areas to be vigilant of rising water levels. We can experience thunder showers across many areas of the country after 2 p.m. daily until the 20th. Showers or thunder showers can be experienced in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central, Uva and southern provinces during the day. Cloudy and showery conditions is expected over most parts of the island. We will be naming a period of 2 weeks for disaster preparedness. This period will be from the 21st of May to the 2nd of June. We will identify the most vulnerable areas in the divisional secretariats and we request the people to conduct clean-up campaigns during this period. Clean the blocked anicuts and drains and remove the dangerous trees and other material. That will be the objective of the program.
Starting today, Newsfirst will provide an opportunity for the people to voice their concerns. This is the People's Mic.
The People's Mic. There is nothing to say about the country. It's difficult for us to survive while the politicians live in comfort. Prices of goods increase on a daily basis. We cannot survive with our monthly salary. What will a family of 4 do? Who should be blamed for this? We need expressways and development, but we cannot travel on the expressway. We would either have to rent a vehicle or travel by bus because my 3-wheeler or motorcycle will not be allowed on it. Give us, the third class, some form of relief to survive. I wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and sleep at midnight. Even then, it would be a peaceful sleep if I see a dream, but it will be lost if I see a nightmare.
There's a balance. Different politicians come to us. We hope either would do something. Things are passed around them. No one did anything to benefit us. No one comes to see us. They don't ask about the issues we face. They discriminate us based on the party.
The main source of income in this country is agriculture. Farmers have abandoned their fields and are working as laborers over here. The reason for that is the country is not active. The People's Mic.
People are finding it difficult to survive because the prices of goods have increased following the fuel price hike. The country will see a good future if the essentials of the poor man are given at a lower price.
I haven't engaged in farming for several years and I came to Colombo for work and that is how my family survives. We cannot live like this. When we buy rice and other goods, it costs almost 4,000 rupees. We do not have proper leaders. They act in parliament like in a kindergarten. This country cannot be governed when there are politicians who are not intelligent and have no social understanding. That is why we are helpless. The country is rich. not poor.
The People's Mic.
Now, the People's Mic is a novel initiative by Newsfirst which gives a platform for the general public to voice their concerns about the issues that impact them the most. So look for the People's Mic in your village or town near you so that you can express your views to the entire country. The Government Medical Officers Association launched a 24-hour island-wide token strike at 8 a.m. today. The strike action is being staged against the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement and the Economic and Technology Cooperative Agreement signed with India, more commonly known as ECTA.
The GMOA warns if the government does not draw its attention on the free trade agreement signed with Singapore, it will resort to more severe trade union action.
We cure any illness with the pill prescribed by our doctors here. So what they're doing is good. We don't need foreign doctors. They are trying to bring in doctors from Singapore when we have so many doctors here. It is the government who has to take responsibility for this.
The President is still being briefed in a situation where no statement has been issued in this regard as yet. The Executive Council of the Government Medical Officers Association decided yesterday to convey the message to the people today that this token strike action will not end just because a discussion was held. We have invited a particular organization who raised this issue for a discussion at the Presidential Secretariat on the 22nd of this month at 12:30 in the afternoon. We have invited them on the instructions of the President. Yesterday we revealed the President tabled a memorandum at the meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers on the 8th of January 2018 stating the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement needs to be drafted and prepared as per the national trade policy, to which the Cabinet agreed in July 2017. However, Newsfirst has learned there is no such national trade policy to be found. When questioned, the co-cabinet spokesperson also said there is no such national trade policy.
Policy එකක් තියෙනවද අනුමත වෙච්ච පාර්ලිමේන්තුවකට හෝ කවුරු හරි විසින් අනුමත වෙච්ච එකක් තියෙනවද එහෙම
කියන ජාතික ප්‍රතිපත්ති එකක්වත් නැහැනේ.
Minister Malik Samaravikrama and his advisors have deceived the whole country and shamelessly handed over the economic independence of our country directly to Singapore forever and indirectly to other nations through this act. Ever since Minister Malik Samaravikrama took over this subject, he has gone ahead in signing this agreement with Singapore as if this country is his own personal property. We were deceived and so were the people.
With opposition mounting over Mode 4 or the movement of people in the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, the Institute of Policy Studies says Sri Lanka's National Labour Migration Policy of 2008 has no formal and regulatory framework to govern immigration of workers. Now, the Institute adds that the current policy framework also lacks domestic regulation to determine and recognize the foreign training, skills and education of incoming workers.
Bilesha Veeraratna, a research fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies, says if Sri Lanka is to open its labour market to foreign workers, it is crucial to develop an authoritative framework that captures foreign credential evaluations beyond individual professional bodies.
Currently, Sri Lanka does not have a framework to govern migrant workers coming into Sri Lanka. So this leads to a lot of problems, especially in terms of evaluating their credentials or qualifications to work in Sri Lanka. I think that is one of the main problems or main arguments that's put forward against foreign workers coming into Sri Lanka. So first and foremost, Sri Lanka has to establish a mechanism to evaluate the credentials or the qualifications of these incoming foreign workers, so that the Sri Lankan workers who are competing with these incoming workers will be at ease knowing that they are competing with equally skilled workers or equally qualified workers.
Politicians and the public in the north and east are divided over Remembrance Day observed to remember those who died in the war. As a result of this, several events have been organized and they will take place at separate locations.
Following the end of the war in 2009, May 18th was named as the Mulliwaikal Remembrance Day to remember those killed in the war. However, during the past few years, the remembrance was not held at one particular location. The Jaffna University Students' Federation has requested all to join the commemoration, casting aside political differences. We have decided to remember those killed in the war on the 18th of May. The students do not want to have a divided Mulliwaikal Remembrance Day. Chief Minister of the North, C.V. Vigneswaran, recently summoned the university students and the local politicians and announced the stance of the Mulliwaikal Remembrance Day. All the politicians accepted the commemoration must be done by the Northern Provincial Council this year as well. The request made by the students to organize it and invite us is something disappointing. The Jaffna University Students' Federation, issuing a statement expressing their displeasure over the Chief Minister's decision, noted the decision taken by the Northern Provincial Council with regard to the commemoration is saddening. The Chief Minister issued another statement over the Mulliwaikal Remembrance Day. It says all the people have agreed the commemoration should take place at one location, and the Chief Minister invited all to attend the event on the 18th at Mulliwaikal.
The joint opposition today responded to a statement made during yesterday's cabinet media briefing by Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne.
එමතුමා මේ වෙනකොට දැන් උතුරු පළාත් සභාවේ ඇමතිවරයෙක් යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවා මැයි 18 යුද්ධය ඉවරුණු දවස ප්‍රභාකරන්නේ මියගිය දවස ශෝක දිනයක් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා දෙමළ ජනතාවගේ සංහාර දිනයක් කියලා. රජයේ ස්ථාවරය මොකක්ද එමතුමා ඒ ගැන?
There is no issue. Until today, the JVP also commemorated their heroes.
මොකද්ද එකක් බක්මහා සමරුව අනිත් එක ඉල්මහා සමරුව. ඔය තියෙන්නේ.
ඉතින් එමතුමා ජාතික සංහාර දිනයක් කියලා ජාතික සංහාර දිනයක් කියලා
Your issue is over the death of the Tamils. So it is fine to kill the Sinhalese and it is not good to kill the Tamils.
මට ප්‍රශ්න නොමෙයි.
Then who has that issue?
එහෙනම් ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ.
නෑ දැන් ඕන් කියන්නේ
Did people from Tamil Nadu die in the north? No. They are our very own people.
ඉන්න කට්ටියද නෑනේ. අපේම මිනිස්සුනේ මරුනේ.
එමතුමා විරුවන් අතින් ඝාතනනේ ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදීන් අපි
ඒක ඒ විරුවන්
එමතුමා විරුවන් අතින් ඝාතනය උනේ ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදීන්. මොකද්ද? විරුවන් අතින් ඝාතනය උනේ ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදීන්.
ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදීන් විතර.
Were only terrorists killed?
කියනවද වෙනත් අයත් ඝාතනය වුණා කියලා කියනවා?
Absolutely. How can you say they were killed during war?
ඔබතුමා කියන්නේ හමුදාවතින් සිවිල් ජනතාව
මම නෙවෙයි ඔය හැම මිනිස්සු.
Every person knows that. Were JVP terrorists killed in the 71 and 88 riots? Were all those who were killed JVP terrorists?
ඔක්කොම JVP ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදී.
නෑ ඔබතුමා ඔය කරන ප්‍රකාශය හරහා ඒ ජාත්‍යන්තරයෙන් ගෙන චෝදනාවට සහයක් නේද ලැබෙන්නේ?
නෑ කිසිම.
No, it does not. If a proper statement was made to the international community, there would be no issue. What did Mahinda Rajapaksa say to the Times? He said there were no deaths and all were terrorists.
මැරිලා නෑ. ඔක්කොම ත්‍ස්ත්‍රවාදීනේ.
The post of cabinet spokesperson should not be taken lightly. A statement made by the cabinet spokesperson will be accepted as the decision or stance of the government and cabinet. Yesterday we witnessed something unfortunate. He made statements that betrayed the armed forces in the face of the international community. It was only the Sri Lankan armed forces who were able to 100% eradicate terrorism that was initiated by the US. The Sri Lankan armed forces have received that honor and acceptance. There is no doubt. The most tragic incident in history took place yesterday. We have no personal issue. But as Sri Lankans and on behalf of my father, who was a major general in the army, we have to be disappointed over the statement made yesterday.
During the media briefing, journalists questioned the arrest of Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca during the previous government.
He was the army commander who commanded the forces during the war, and it is my personal view his arrest was wrong. My personal view can be different from the legal point of view. But thanks to people like that, today we can live freely. Fonseca is a party to that.
Up next is Voice of the Village.
A year has passed since the landslide of the Morawaka mountain in Mathura claimed 31 lives and left many others without a home. 16 families continue to live in makeshift tents as they are yet to be given permanent housing. While these families are facing such difficulties, the National Youth Bakmaha celebrations took place at the Morawaka Abe Vikrama National School under the auspices of the Prime Minister on the 28th of April. Locals claim around 40 million rupees was spent on the celebrations. On the 28th of April, a New Year celebration took place at the National School premises in Morawaka, spending millions. None of the bridges in the Morawaka area have been renovated. Around 12,000 families living in the Udapalata in Gampala and the Kotmale Divisional Secretariat use the Gampala-Dorgala road on a daily basis. Yet authorities have not taken any measures to renovate this road for many years. Buses operating on this road have suspended operations, and the villagers have now been compelled to use a 40-kilometer-long alternative route to reach the Gampala town.
Politicians from various parties promised to renovate this road, but they have not kept promises.
Around 5 to 6 lorries come here from Dambulla. It is difficult for us to travel because the road is in a very bad state.
In a move to prop up the weakening rupee, the central bank released a notice saying it's determined to curb unwarranted depreciation of the rupee as the currency touched 159 against the US dollar in midday spot trading today.
The notice, which appeared in mainstream daily newspapers, said that underlying fundamentals do not warrant the current pressure on the Sri Lankan rupee. Gross external reserves are presently at a healthy $9.1 billion, and the real effective exchange rate indices indicate that the currency is competitive. The central bank said the pressure on the currency is therefore unwarranted. The notice said inflows expected from the IMF, Hambantota Port, and the $1 billion syndicated term loan will boost reserves to $11 billion by mid-June 2018. The central bank said it has the option of using a part of its unprecedented large external reserves to trigger a material appreciation of the rupee to prevent unwarranted depreciation of the currency.
Amid an increase in financial crimes, the government has looped in new agencies to bolster the fight against anti-money laundering and terrorist financing.
A cabinet paper forwarded by Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaravira has received approval to include the Director General of the Bribery Commission, Commissioner General of the Department of Inland Revenue, the Commissioner General of the Department of Excise, and representatives of the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of National Policies and Economic Affairs in the National Coordination Committee for Preventing Money Laundering and Terrorism Funding. Joint Cabinet spokesperson Minister Gayantha Karunatilaka said an expansion in the use of technology has led to an increase in financial crimes, and better coordination among government institutions are essential to face the situation successfully. Sri Lanka comes under the purview of the Asia-Pacific Group of the Financial Action Task Force's Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Terrorist Finance Framework. The global anti-money laundering body placed Sri Lanka under monitoring status or a grey list last year, saying there were strategic deficiencies in combating money laundering and terrorist financing. Following the FATF action, the European Union also added Sri Lanka to its list of countries at risk for money laundering. Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy said earlier this year that an action plan is underway to get Sri Lanka out of the Financial Action Task Force grey list. Analysts say that there has not been any direct impact because of listing, but a further deterioration or lack of progress in sound anti-money laundering and terrorist financing regulations could negatively impact the country's sovereign rating, the banking system and international trade. Do you remember the Mithotamulla tragedy which claimed the lives of 32 people? What is the progress on the promises made to manage the waste in Colombo? What happened to the $115 million loan facility which was to be obtained from the World Bank for the Greater Colombo Waste Management Project?
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight. For the News First team, I'm Ramesh Rizal Bandara.
And I'm Sarah Fonseca. Good night, take care, God bless.